Hey, good evening, less lethal people. So, I want to talk tonight a little bit about branding. And what I mean by branding is the brand of launcher and projectile that we use, making sure it is branded for less lethal. Since COVID happened, I think we all can say people have started to lose it. And that caused an increase in both real firearm sales and in less lethal sales. And people really started getting into this, people who were never into it, because people were afraid of a lot of things. People were losing it out in the street. A lot more violent things occurred. Then now we have all this migrant problem, and I don't call it immigration, I call it invasion, but that's my term for it. And people are losing it left and right. They're not able to cope with what's going on. And a lot of times that happens, who suffers? The innocent people. They become victims of this. Now we throw into the mix some political things going on, during this election year, and what's going on now with both sides, the, Democrat and Republican sides. You have people on both sides really losing it. They're really worried about what's going to happen. And it's another stress, and you don't know when somebody's string is going to break, or the straw that breaks the camel's back. So if you're not into less lethal, I think this is probably the best time for somebody to get into less lethal. And if you are already in less lethal, well, we have to really start to evaluate certain things. If you're into less lethal and you EDC, that means everyday carry, and you're carrying outside, it's very important what you choose, both in, less lethal launcher or device and projectiles. Now, I'm not talking about in your house. I'm talking about strictly out in public. Because if, for some strange reason, God forbid you have to use this thing to defend yourself or protect your life or somebody you're with's life, you may have to go in front of a judge. And if that's the case, what you use can make or break the case. What you use can either cost you a ton of money or hopefully get you through it without losing your livelihood. So branding is very important. And if we're going to go out there and carry every day, EDC, out in public, remember, we're trying to save our life. We not only want to save our life, that means in protecting and defending ourselves, our family, our house, and I mean monetarily wise, our house. We don't want to lose it because of a lawsuit. Also, livelihood, pensions, etc. And when you choose something, you really should choose something that's branded for less lethal. Now, I'm not going to say which companies are the best. Every company is different. And some people do prefer ones over the other. And if you prefer one over the other, that's fine, as long as you know the capabilities of that launcher or that device, and you have training and you know how to train with it. Such as if you're choosing something that does not have high joules, obviously then you might want to use chemical rounds in it if you can, or you may have to choose a different target or area you hit. So that's training. But brands like Byrne or brands like Salt Supply, Pepperball, Grimberg, these are all less lethal companies, right? JPX, Pixion, who makes the little Kimber Pepper blaster, and the JPX blaster, jet projector, whatever the name is. These are all less lethal companies. And if you're going to carry less lethal, you really should carry something that's branded less lethal. Now, you also have to start thinking, or we have to start thinking, what are we using as a projectile in that? Are we using something that's branded for less lethal, or are we using something that's a misnomer, something that, is less lethal, but its name does not sound less lethal? So for me, when I go out, I carry a Salt Supply because it's made for less lethal, and I carry Grimberg less lethal rounds or Duke Defense. These are all branded companies. I try when I'm out in public to stay, or I shouldn't say I try, I do stay away. I don't use something like Home Wrecker. They're good for practicing in the house. They're good for home defense. Home Wrecker is not something you would want to carry. It has a misleading name. Devastator, misleading name. Killer Spikes, misleading name. And while they may not be lethal, they mislead. And if you have to go in front of a judge one day because you had to use one of your less lethal launchers, you want to make sure, hey, I had no intent on doing damage. I used a less lethal launcher. I used a less lethal round. That's your intent, and it's all about intent. Once you use something that implies different intent, killer spikes, your intent just went out the window, and that can jam you up. So this was a short video. I wasn't looking to make it political, but understand we're in a really, really crazy time, and right now is probably the best time to start getting into less lethal if you're not already into it. And if you are, it's time to start evaluating. Instead of building 101 launchers and modifying this and that, stick to a couple, 1, 2, 3, maybe a long launcher and a pistol launcher, and having the right projectile, having the right launcher, and training with that over and over again. It's better to have one good reliable than it is to have a whole collection that you don't train with and you don't know how to use them, and they may not be reliable because you're pumping up the power to crazy, ridiculous joules. We have to start focusing on branding, and branding is very, very important. It should be one of the first things you look at when you choose a less lethal. So for instance, I would not choose, I know they're cheaper, but I would not choose an FSC only because for everyday carry outside, only because it's a paintball marker. I would possibly choose a Pepperball TCP. Granted, it's more money for the same thing, but I'm purchasing the name for a legal reason. Same thing, Salt Supply, same thing, Grimberg. So as opposed to something that's used for paintball that we modify or used for something else that we modify. Okay, so these are just strictly for outdoor. I'm leaving my property, my house. You know, I want to be sure I have something that's labeled less lethal. Anyway, that's a quick little video tonight. Hope everybody's doing good, and I'll see you soon. Have a good night.